The boy possesses an immortal body. Even if his heart is pierced, he recovers within seconds. Initially thought to be a divine gift, after living for centuries and witnessing the death of those around him, he realized that this immortality was actually a cruel curse. Originally just a boy from the slums, he was one day chosen by Uryu to become one of the 4 dragon warriors serving King Hiru. Hakuryu had a dragon hand that could tear through weapons. Seiryu possessed dragon eyes that could mesmerize humans, and Ryokuryu inherited powerful dragon legs. Uryu's ability, however, seemed trivial, merely healing quickly from injuries without a clear explanation from the dragon god of its nature. Thus, he was often the one protected in battle. Under King Hiryu's leadership, they established a powerful nation. Although Uryu was the weakest among the brothers, he was not ostracized. Even though they were not related by blood, their shared inheritance of the dragon god's powers bonded them like true brothers, with King Hiru as their eldest. The longer Uryu stayed with them, the more he felt like the least useful warrior, possessing nothing but a strong body. King Hiru realized a terrible truth, embraced Uryu tightly, and entrusted him with his most precious treasure, though Uryu did not understand why the king did so. Just then, their nation faced another invasion. King Hiru sent out the other 3 dragon warriors, keeping Uryu by his side. With just the 3 warriors, they could match an army. Knowing the power of the dragons was beyond human reach, the enemy resorted to a war of attrition. Despite their dragon powers, they were still human. During a retreat led by Uryu and Seiryu, Uryu was ambushed by the enemy. As he thought he would die there, his massive wound suddenly healed. It was the first time Uryu realized how strong his healing power was. Years passed, and the other dragon warriors began to age. King Hiru suddenly fell ill, and only Uryu remained unchanged by time. Watching his brothers age, Uryu grew terrified of his own body. King Hiru seemed to perceive something. Uryu confessed to the king his body was incredibly strong, immune to fatigue and illness. Although he felt pain from injuries, they healed quickly, completely. "What's the difference between me and an immortal monster?" He repeatedly asked the king about the nature of his dragon power. King Hiru could only hold him gently, unable to relieve Uryu of his torment. A few days later, King Hiru died. The dragon warriors wept bitterly by his body. After King Hiru's death, the other 3 dragon warriors were sent back to battle. People began to covet the power of the dragons for themselves. They captured Seiryu as a prisoner. Fortunately, Hakuryu and Ryokuryu rescued him in time. Since then, Seiryu blinded himself and decided to no longer use the power of the dragon. The dragon warriors realized humans' desire for their power and unanimously decided to leave the kingdom and live in seclusion. However, Uryu chose to stay in the palace. He felt obligated to protect the nation that King Hiru had established and planned to leave only once everything was stable. Although they were about to part ways, they were brothers with the blood of dragons. Despite being separated by great distances, they would always respond to each other. The bond of the dragon warriors would never fade. After saying their goodbyes, the 3 warriors each embarked on their own journeys. Aoryu served as a priest within the kingdom. Years passed. Hakuryu and Seiryu found solace in the mountains, while Ryokuryu wandered. 20 years quickly passed. Uryu could still sense his brothers' locations through their bloodline, but their presences were weakening. Over these 2 decades, the kingdom faced conflicts but did not lose a single soldier because Uryu, unwilling to sacrifice King Hiru's people, chose to fight alone on the battlefield. Using his immortal body, he wore down the enemy forces, his incredible vitality causing countless soldiers to tremble. However, at this time, the lifespans of his 3 brothers reached their ends. Feeling their lives fading, Uryu was in immense pain. He did not avoid meeting his brothers because he did not care, but because he feared facing them as they aged. Despite his dedicated service to the nation, Uryu faced ostracism years later because he alone did not age. After appointing a successor as priest, he left the palace and entrusted the successor with King Hiru's crest. However, shortly after leaving, the crest mysteriously reappeared on him. Perhaps it was King Hiru's will, or a sign that he still had a mission with the crest. Aryu then set off alone on his journey. During his travels, Uryu often sensed the presence of the other dragon warriors. The bloodline of the dragons did not disappear, but continued to be passed down generation to generation. Yet, these were not the brothers he knew. While secretly observing the new Hakuryu, Uryu was attacked by people from another tribe. If not for his immortality, he might have died there. He remembered Hakuryu's promise that no matter how many years passed, he would wait for him. However, Uryu dared not face his aging brother, and they never saw each other one last time. Regret now could not change anything. Uryu continued his journey, having lived for countless years. Though he could not die, he still felt human emotions. Yet, he could not starve himself to death, even if he tried. Until one day, a girl found him and took him home. The girl, named Kaya, explained the situation to Zeno when he woke up and shared her limited food with him. However, Zeno did not want to eat because he longed for death. Kaya did not understand his desire, as she herself was suffering from a contagious disease and could die at any time. She had chosen to live alone away from the village to avoid infecting others. Kaya had not intended to hide this from Zeno. She planned to have him leave after eating. After learning about Kaya's situation, Zeno told her his name, which he hadn't heard anyone use in years since he had parted ways with his brothers. He had almost forgotten his own name. Kaya suggested that if he ever felt close to forgetting his name, he should just call it out to himself. Kaya wanted Zeno to leave soon, but he did not want to go. She had taken care of him, and now it was his turn to repay her kindness. Moreover, he could not catch her disease. So, they continued to live together. With Zeno's help, Kaya's life became easier. During the day, Zeno would work outside to earn food, and Kaya would prepare dinner for him. Occasionally, Zeno brought her flowers, and their harmonious, warm life eased much of his past pain. However, happiness did not last. Kaya's illness worsened. After making sure she was warm, Zeno heated stones and put them in a cloth bag for her to hold and keep warm. Seeing all that Zeno had done for her, Kaya wished he would leave and pursue his desires instead of spending his days with her, a sick person. At this moment, Zeno felt utterly hopeless. He wished to transfer his immortal power to Kaya and prayed repeatedly for the dragon god to reappear. If the god could grant him eternal life, surely he could extend Kaya's life as well. However, no matter how many times Zeno prayed, the dragon god did not respond, and Kaya's illness reached its final stage. In her last moments, Kaya made a promise to meet Zeno in the next life, but with his eternal life, how could he possibly enter the cycle of reincarnation? He could only watch as Kaya turned to bones. After burying Kaya near their home, Zeno resumed his journey, having lost all sense of time. Without friends or purpose, whenever he felt on the verge of a breakdown, only King Hiryu's crest could calm him. He realized then why King Hiryu had reacted the way he did upon learning of his power. The king had foreseen Zeno's fate and given him the crest for the dragon god's protection, and to give Zeno something to cling to. But with King Hiryu gone, why hadn't the dragon god taken back the power? Thinking this, Zeno suddenly realized that King Hiryu might resurrect, and he could reunite with the bloodline of his brothers. At that moment, Uryu finally found a purpose: to protect the nation that King Hiryu had established, waiting for his return. One day, a red star suddenly lit up, and it seemed all the dragon warriors sensed it. Uryu found the young Hakuryu, whose powers had not yet matured, so he did not recognize Uryu. They watched the distant red star together, and Uryu noticed a large claw mark on Hakuryu's back, signifying their shared burdens. When Hakuryu's people came looking for him, Uryu had to leave. Next, Uryu found Siryu through their bond. For some reason, the young Siryu wore a mask and was always playing alone. The last one he found was Ryokuryu. Even the gentle Uryu was outraged to see Ryokuryu, who once soared in the skies, now chained and locked in a dungeon. The rebirth of King Hiryu's soul could be for protecting the nation, creating a new one, or because of his attachment to the dragon warriors. Uryu could not know. That was something to be revealed in years to come, and all he could do was wait. In the palace, Princess Yona is carefully dressing up, because today is her 16th birthday, marking her coming of age. She is the reincarnation of King Hiryu. The king dotes on her immensely, and has arranged for the strongest general to be her guard. Hawk, who has grown up with Yona, likes to tease her. Although Yona would like to change her guard, No one can defeat Hawk in a contest. Growing up alongside them was another friend, Suwon, who is quite different from Hawk. As a royal descendant, he resembles a refined scholar and has always been gentle towards Yona. However, Yona could never imagine that the person she admired the most would eventually become her greatest enemy. Suwon has been accompanying Yona in the palace since they were children. Whenever Yona felt wronged, Suwon would comfort her. Yona fell for the gentle Suwon, but he seemed to only see her as a sister, and their relationship made no progress. The next day, when Yona went to have breakfast with Suwon, she was told he was competing with Hawk in archery, an area where Hawk excelled as a true warrior. Seeing Yona eager to try, Suwon invited her to go horseback riding. While riding, Yona asked Suwon about his romantic experiences, but he said he hadn't dated anyone. Yona playfully claimed she was already discussing marriage, and when Suwon asked with whom, she could only think of Hawk, though it was clearly a joke. Suwon still wished her well. However, the king told Yona he planned to betroth her to Hawk, but she only wanted to be with Suwon. The king opposed this, and Yona didn't expect such an angry reaction from her father, who was strongly against Suwon for reasons unknown to her. Yona hid and cried alone. At that moment, an assassin approached her. In the chaos, Yona hid in a room. Suwon found her there and went to check outside, but the assassin had already disappeared. Suwon returned to comfort Yona, and with him by her side, she gradually calmed down. Suwon was eager to leave, but Yona confessed her feelings for him. Seeing the person she liked blush made Yona inexplicably happy. Even if she couldn't marry Suwon, it was enough for her that he noticed her a little. A few days later, Yona's coming-of-age ceremony finally arrived. Officials gathered at the palace to celebrate. Suwon gave Yona a beautiful hairpin and expressed his admiration for her long, crimson hair, reminiscent of the dawn sky. As the two shared a tender moment, Hawk suddenly appeared, having been sent by the king who was looking for Yona. Hawk sensed something amiss in the palace, as if someone had infiltrated it. He instructed Suwon to protect Yona while he went to strengthen the palace's security. That evening, Yona decided to speak with her father again about Suwon, as her feelings for him were genuine. However, what she witnessed next left her utterly devastated. Suwon, the man she had admired, had killed her father. The Suwon she knew had changed. He believed Yona's father was too kind to be a king. Suwon's own father, a brave and skilled warrior, had not been chosen as king. Yet he harbored no resentment and was content to serve the country, even if only as a general. But it was this patriotic general who was killed by Yona's father, a secret known only to a few. The peace-loving king had committed such an act, prompting Suwon's revenge, to avenge his father and change the weak country, though he did not intend to harm Yona. That's why he chose to strike at night, unaware that Yona would be there. She had only come to persuade her father to approve their marriage. Upon hearing this, Suwon was overwhelmed with mixed emotions. Rebels who were part of the coup also arrived at the scene. They planned to kill Yona to prevent the truth from being revealed. In a panic, Yona knocked over a brazier and fled the room amidst the chaos. However, soldiers quickly surrounded her. Just in time, Hawk, sensing something was wrong, arrived and swiftly dealt with the soldiers. This was the first time Hawk saw Yona so terrified. He was commanded by the king to protect the princess and would never betray her, regardless of the circumstances. The soldiers commanded Hawk to kneel, as Suwon was to be the next king. Upon learning that Suwon had killed Yona's father, Hawk, unable to believe his close friend could murder the benevolent king, furiously confronted Suwon. Suwon was quickly injured under Hawk's attack. The soldiers then took Yona hostage to subdue Hawk. As they were about to kill them both, an arrow flew in, breaking the stalemate. Hawk seized the opportunity to rescue Yona. The rescuer was one of the princess's attendants, who had donned Yona's clothes to distract the pursuers while Hawk and Yona escaped from the palace. After escaping the palace, Yona was in a state of shock. The people closest to her had left her overnight, and her loyal servants were killed while saving her. Yona didn't know where to go. On the day of her 16th birthday, she lost her family, her loved one, and her only home. Hawk stayed by her side, hoping she would soon overcome her grief. 3 years ago, Hawk and his grandfather visited the palace to see the king. The king liked Hawk very much and wanted him to become the princess's guard. However, Hawk found the palace too formal and preferred a freer life, so he declined the king's request. Nevertheless, because of their childhood bond, Yona sometimes relied heavily on Hawk. Due to her status, nobles often proposed marriage to her, especially Kanjun from the Fire Tribe, who was persistent. Hawk suggested Yona could announce her liking for Suwon to avoid trouble, but she found the idea too embarrassing since it was unrequited love. Frustrated by the complications, Hawk planned to leave, which Yona did not understand and thought him suddenly indifferent. Later, she brought him lots of treats and apologized, hoping to remain good friends. When Kanjun harassed Yona again, even inappropriately touching her in the palace, Hawk couldn't stand by and intervened, claiming they were betrothed since childhood. An angry Kanjun challenged Hawk to a duel, but the king intervened, scaring Kanjun away with a blade. The king then reiterated his request for Hawk to protect Yona, and Hawk formally accepted the role, knowing the king was not a weak ruler. Now, with the king murdered, Hawk was determined to protect Princess Yona. However, as they fled, Yona grew increasingly frail and despondent, with Suwon to blame for their plight. The only time Yona took independent action was to search for a lost hairpin, a gift from Suwon on her birthday, which nearly led to a snake attack. Hawk arrived just in time to save her and retrieved the hairpin. Meanwhile, unable to locate Hawk and Yona, Suwon ordered the pursuit halted as he had more pressing matters, ascending to the throne. After a long journey, Hawk finally returned to his homeland, the Wind Tribe. With his grandfather's troops there, Suwon did not dare to openly start a civil war. The villagers crowded around when they saw Hawk arrive with a woman, but Yona had already fainted from exhaustion, and his grandfather was not in the tribe because a summoning order had been issued for the leaders of the 5 tribes to go to the palace. At the palace, the 5 tribal chiefs gathered together. The king had suddenly died, and rumors circulated that Hawk had killed his highness and then fled with the princess. Suwon asked them to keep this a secret, warning that if the news leaked, other nations would seize the opportunity to invade. The priority was to stabilize the domestic situation. Princess Yona, the primary heir to the throne, was now missing, leaving Suwon, who also had royal blood, as the only viable successor. He needed the approval of the 5 tribal chiefs to become king. The 4 major tribes had no objections, but Mundok, the chief of the Wind Tribe, withheld his opinion since he had already passed the leadership to Hawk. To gain the Wind Tribe's approval, Suwon would have to speak with Hawk himself. Mundok stated that he would gladly bless Suwon and Yona's marriage and accession to the throne, but now his grandson Hawk had mysteriously disappeared. He did not believe that Hawk would kidnap the princess. Suwon clearly informed Mundok that the coronation ceremony would take place in 3 days. If Mundok did not show up, the Wind Tribe would be regarded as rebellious and would face a joint attack from the 4 major tribes. Suwon had already won over the other 4 major tribes. These tribal chiefs thought the previous king was weak and strongly supported Suwon as the new king. After some rest, Yona finally woke up, and Hawk continued to keep her identity hidden. However, Suwon soon took action against the Wind Tribe, with the Fire Tribe cutting off the tribe's only water supply. When Mundok returned and saw the princess and Hawk together, he realized Suwon was the true mastermind behind the troubles. They had no way to respond effectively, as the water cutoff was just a warning from Suwon. If Mundok did not attend the coronation, a siege by the 4 tribes would surely follow. Recognizing Suwon as king would imply accepting the suspicion that Hawk killed the king. At night, Hawk met with his grandfather, returned the leadership to him, and asked him to acknowledge Suwon as king to save the tribe. Hawk was willing to be branded a national criminal and wanted. Yona, hiding here, would be spared by Suwon's mercy. After seeing a merchant caravan attacked by the Fire Tribe, Yona realized it might be because of her and decided to leave with Hawk. Only then could the Wind Tribe be completely free from conflict. However, Hawk was determined to prevent any further harm to Yona. Despite this, Yona decided to leave with Hawk. Hawk's grandfather specifically told her that she could return to the Wind Tribe any time if she ever faced despair again. He also gave them crucial information: to seek the retired royal priest who would guide Princess Yona on her path forward. For the first time, Yona stepped outside the palace. As a princess, she only knew Hiru Castle. Lost in her thoughts, Hawk suddenly pushed her against a wall due to the sound of approaching footsteps, sensing danger. Indeed, it was the Fire Tribe's soldiers who quickly surrounded them. However, Hawk was eager for battle, making the attacking soldiers seem like children with weapons. When a frontal attack failed, Kanjun ordered archers to shoot. Hawk easily knocked down the arrows, but the enemy was too numerous. While Hawk could easily retreat alone, protecting the princess distracted him. As Yona stumbled, the enemy aimed an arrow at her. To protect her, Hawk shielded her with his body. After securing Yona in a hidden spot, Hawk decided to confront all the enemies alone. However, the arrow that hit him was poisoned, which would immobilize a normal person immediately. But Hawk still managed to keep fighting. As his strength began to falter, Kanjun planned a sneak attack from behind. Yona, seeing this, was unsure how to help without risking capture by the enemy, which would endanger Hawk even more. Yet if she did nothing, Hawk would surely be killed. Yona's decision to leave the Wind Tribe was not to live under Hawk's protection, but to live freely. She could have hidden in the Wind Tribe for the rest of her life if safety was her only concern. So she knocked a soldier off a cliff and glared angrily at Kanjun. She had already lost her family and could not lose Hawk too. Kanjun tried to persuade her, but Yona wouldn't believe his lies. Her fiery gaze put immense pressure on Kanjun. Though Hawk had eliminated most of the soldiers, his body was nearly spent. If not for Yona, he might have already fallen. He fought fiercely, but was eventually ambushed and thrown towards a cliff edge. Yona, in utter despair, thought she was about to lose Hawk too. She rushed towards him, but Kanjun grabbed her long hair. Resolute, Yona cut off her hair with a weapon, breaking her father's rule against her wielding arms. Although her swordsmanship was clumsy, her determination to face death was moving. Yona tried to pull Hawk up from the cliff edge, but she wasn't strong enough, and they both fell off the cliff. This shattered Kanjun's dreams of becoming king, and he might also face punishment from the new king. He handed Yona's hair to Suwan and reported her death, following Suwan's orders to report if they were found. However, Kanjun had acted on his own to capture them. Suwan did not punish him, but sadly looked at Yona's red hair, as he still had his own mission to complete. Once, the three were best friends. In a casual conversation, Suwan had envied Yona for having Hawk as a strong guard. Hawk had said if Suwan married Yona and became king, he would serve as Suwan's guard to ensure their safety. Now, as the newly crowned king, he had lost two close friends. Meanwhile, the unconscious Yona and Hawk were rescued by a boy named Yoon, a doctor. Hawk had held on to Yona as they fell, cushioning their fall with his body. Fortunately, Hawk's sturdy body withstood the impact. Unexpectedly for Yona, Yoon's guardian turned out to be the kingdom's priest. As the former priest Uryu, he never imagined that the priest he trained to protect the nation would be exiled and become reviled years later. Yona, living in the palace, was unaware of why the priest was driven out. Meanwhile, Hawk's fever persisted, and Yona could only pray that Yoon would save him. To ease the princess's worries, the priest invited Yona for a walk. During their stroll, Yona asked why the priest had settled there. He explained that it all happened naturally. That evening, Yona approached Yoon to earnestly thank him. Perhaps because she was accustomed to being treated with deference as a princess, she had always assumed that everyone's efforts on her behalf were expected. Now she realized she had been wrong. Expressing gratitude for help received is necessary. Yona also hoped Yoon would share more about the priest's situation. In the past, priests held untouchable authority, even over kings, since the original priest, Uryu, served King Hiru. After King Hiryu's death, Uryu protected the nation for years and mentored new kings and priests. After Uryu left the country, the priest's power grew significantly, even to the point where a priest had overthrown a king. At the height of the kingdom's power, the king saw the influential priests as a threat to his rule and expelled the current priest from the palace. The priest then realized that only the royal city was prosperous, while the rest of the kingdom suffered from hunger and conflict. Despite his desire to save everyone, he was powerless and eventually developed mental illness. At night, Yona noticed that Hawk was missing and hurried outside to look for him. It turned out Hawk had gone to retrieve his weapon that he had dropped, knowing they could face battles any time. He was surprised to see how worried the princess was about him. Seeing Yona had cut her beloved long hair, Hawk realized he had failed to protect her. However, Yona now disliked her long hair because it had been praised by Suwan, whom she needed to let go of emotionally. Yet Hawk understood that Yona hadn't truly moved on. because she could part with her favorite hair, but not the hairpin Su-wan had given her. Still harboring some attachment, the next day, Yona continued to seek advice from the priest, but found him crying on a cliff, having seen a vision involving Yona and the world. The priest foresaw that Yona would stir significant changes in the kingdom. While she could choose a quiet, ordinary life, her fiery blood would not allow it. The priest then conveyed a divine prophecy to Yona. When darkness descends upon the land, the blood of Hiru will revive the dead. According to the ancient covenant, when the 4 dragons gather, the guardian artifacts will awaken, leading to the dawn of the red dragon. Though Yona did not understand the full meaning of these words, they would soon become reality. Rumors say that the red dragon god descended to guide humanity, but inadvertently caused disputes with them. King Hiru was captured by humans and nearly executed when 4 dragons descended to the mortal realm. Unwilling to see Hiru killed, the 4 dragons granted their blood to human warriors, giving them strength. These warriors became embodiments of the dragons, dedicated to protecting Hiru's life. With the power of the dragon gods, the warriors led their tribes to protect Hiru and quell internal strife. However, after Hiru fell into a deep sleep, the mission of the 4 dragon warriors ended. Believing their power was too great for ordinary humans, the dragon warriors left the kingdom they helped establish. Their descendants formed the current kingdom's 5 tribes, which is the foundation myth of Yona's nation. However, the priest told Yona that these events were real, only becoming mythologized over time. If Yona wanted to protect everything dear to her, she needed to find the legendary 4 dragon warriors. Yona worried that the legendary dragons might not help due to these matters, yet all her encounters miraculously escaped danger. This was fate. If Yona could truly find the dragon warriors, it would be her destiny. Resolved, Yona decided to set out to find them. The priest asked them to take Yoon along since he was a walking encyclopedia who could assist them. The descendants of the dragon warriors had been changing their residences since ancient times, except for one who had always stayed in the same place. This was their first destination. Deep in distant mountains, a white-haired boy awaited the return of King Hiru. The newborn baby was almost killed by his biological father because he inherited the new Hakuryu's power, which meant the old Hakuryu would lose his strength. Despite not having completed his mission to serve King Hiru, the father was reluctant to lose the bloodline of Hakuryu. However, he was stopped by the tribal chief and subsequently isolated and monitored, never able to see his child again. The baby grew up to become the new Hakuryu, but the claw marks on his back left a permanent scar. Meanwhile, Yona and her companions, in their struggle to survive, embarked on a journey to find the 4 dragon warriors. Each time they entered a village for food, they narrowly avoided detection by soldiers of the Fire Tribe. During their travels, they heard that Su-wan had officially become king. They continued their journey, dodging searches while heading towards their destination. After much thought, Yona decided to ask Hawk to teach her swordsmanship, as she did not want to always be a burden to him. However, Hawk questioned if Yona was truly ready to take another person's life, explaining that wielding a weapon means fighting and not allowing the opponent to stand up could be necessary. Yona, even if she couldn't kill, wanted to create opportunities to free Hawk when needed. Ultimately, Hawk compromised and agreed to teach Yona archery due to the urgency of their situation. They practiced while on the move, with Yona attempting to hunt animals to overcome her inner fear. Hawk even had Yona practice shooting arrows at him, treating him like an enemy, but her lack of killing intent meant she could not harm him. After traveling for several days, the group finally arrived at a dense, foggy forest where Yoon mysteriously disappeared. Soon, they were surrounded by a group of people led by an old man. Seeing Yona's red hair, the old man recalled the teachings of his ancestors and took Yona and her companions to their village for confirmation. Yoon had already been captured and brought here, which was the settlement of Hakuryu. The lineage of Hakuryu had been passed down here, and the villagers had protected them generation after generation. The original Hakuryu had served King Hiru, who also had red hair, which was why they respected Yona. To confirm Yona's identity, they relied on the current Hakuryu, who was bound by the dragon's bond. That's why they brought them to the village. Upon seeing Yona for the first time, the blood of Hakuryu began to flow backwards, and the new Hakuryu fully awakened his dragon powers. Through the bond in his blood, he realized that Yona was the king he was destined to protect in this life. However, Yona stated that she was not the king of Hakuryu. She had come seeking the power to protect herself and her companions. Upon leaving, Hakuryu specifically instructed the villagers to protect their village well. Then, they embarked on their new journey. The four dragon warriors share a unique bond that allows them to sense each other's locations, with the sensation growing stronger as they draw nearer. Hakuryu sensed that Seiryu was the closest. However, soon after they set off, they were attacked by bandits. Yoon and Yona hid in advance. The bandits were no match for Hawk and Hakuryu. This was the first battle in thousands of years for the bloodline of Hakuryu, and the thrill of battle invigorated him, excited to fight for his king again. However, Hawk's skill in killing the enemies was no less impressive than Hakuryu's. Yona, hiding in a corner, attempted to fight under Yoon's guidance and hit a bandit who was sneaking up on them, but they were discovered by other bandits. Hawk and Hakuryu rushed over, and soon all the bandits were dealt with, but Hawk's wound reopened, causing him to faint. Yona couldn't move Hawk by herself, but fortunately, Hakuryu easily lifted Hawk. Hawk woke up later that night, and Hakuryu shared intelligence collected from his village. The Seiryu clan had once lived in secrecy within the Earth Tribe's territory, but one day, the entire tribe vanished. Without the dragon bond, Hakuryu wouldn't have been able to find Seiryu. After the rest, they searched the likely locations of Seiryu one by one, but couldn't find any trace. Seiryu's presence was elusive. Meanwhile, Yona continued her archery training relentlessly, unable to forgive her own weakness and desiring to become stronger to help her companions. After eliminating other villages from their search, they finally arrived at a stony mountain where Hakuryu could clearly sense Seiryu's presence. As soon as they entered, they were surrounded by hostile villagers, and Seiryu did not come out to meet Yona. The baby was considered a monster by the villagers immediately after birth, leading his mother to take her own life. The villagers put a mask on the baby's face because he was the next Seiryu, whose powerful dragon eyes could petrify people. Seiryu has never removed his mask since birth, always seeing darkness, relying only on his dragon eyes to see his surroundings. He was raised by the old Seiryu. As the new Seiryu's powers began to awaken, the old Seiryu's powers gradually faded. However, no one in the village wanted to be near them. After the new Seiryu sought out other children, hoping to make friends, the old Seiryu scolded him and mockingly told him that he could never make friends. But the new Seiryu did not understand why the villagers avoided him. There has always been a rumor in the village that anyone who looks into Seiryu's eyes will turn to stone. However, the dragon eyes do not petrify people. They cause paralysis, and depending on the power's intensity, they can even paralyze the heart. This is why the villagers are so fearful, viewing Seiryu's bloodline as a curse. Even if a Seiryu dies, the power will be reborn in a new baby, leaving everyone uncertain if their child might be the next Seiryu. Despite being the most powerful entity in the village, each Seiryu has the duty to protect the village. When bandits invaded, the old Seiryu still had to ensure the village's safety. However, as the new Seiryu's powers awakened more, the old Seiryu's powers weakened. Yet, dealing with a few bandits was still easy for him, as he was a strong swordsman by nature. The new Seiryu asked why he did not use the power of the dragon eyes against the bad people. The old Seiryu explained that the power of the dragon eyes was too terrifying to use, unless absolutely necessary, as using it would lead to a lifetime of being despised. With no friends or parents, he now saw the old Seiryu as his only support. Although the old Seiryu was strict with him, the new Seiryu understood it was all to protect him, and even taught him how to control the power of his eyes. But as time passed, the new Seiryu's powers awakened more, and the old Seiryu's body grew weaker, struggling even against bandits. While they managed to drive the bandits away, the old Seiryu completely lost his sight. It was unclear whether he felt pain or relief as he vented years of suppressed emotions. On their way back, the old Seiryu apologized to the new Seiryu, for he had completed his mission of passing on the lineage and then fell into an eternal slumber. The new Seiryu inherited all the cursed powers, making the villagers fear him even more. Seiryu confined himself to his house daily, using his dragon eyes to monitor the surroundings of the village. Soon, another group of soldiers coveting the dragon's power arrived in large numbers. With his current swordsmanship alone, he knew he couldn't defeat them all. To protect the village Seiryu was guarding, he decided to bear the pain of the curse alone. After the disaster, Hiru village began to relocate, hiding deep within the stone mountains and showing great hostility towards outsiders. When Yona and her group arrived, they were immediately surrounded. Hakuryu asked the villagers to bring out his brother, but the villagers claimed there was no Hiru there. Despite this, Hakuryu's senses were not mistaken, and it was unclear why they were hiding Hiru's presence. Yona decided to stay overnight, trusting in Hakuryu's bond, believing there must be a reason Hiru would not show himself. The group secretly went out to look for Hiru. Soon, a squirrel distracted Yona, and she accidentally entered a hidden door, losing sight of Hawk and the others. Fortunately, a villager found Yona and tried to lead her away, but Yona felt something was wrong as they kept descending, which couldn't be the way out of the cave. Hiru appeared just in time to scare away the villager, but Yona did not recognize the boy as Hiru. When Hiru brought Yona to Hakuryu, he recognized the boy as Hiru. Hiru's identity exposed, he ran away, thinking he would spend his life here and pass on the Hiru power to the next generation. However, Princess Yona's arrival disrupted the peace. The moment he met Yona, the blood of Hiru in him awakened. He realized the girl in front of him might share an unknown bond with him, but he did not want to use his malevolent power anymore. Hakuryu could never understand his behavior because after seeing Yona, Hiru must have awakened as well. However, unlike Hakuryu, he did not fight for the king. Hiru village and Hakuryu village were entirely opposite in this regard. After careful analysis, Yoon concluded that it was actually Hakuryu village that was the exception. Due to the constant wars affecting Hiru village, the villagers did not worship the dragon god, and to them, Hakuryu might truly seem like an invader. Yet, for some reason, Hiru saved Yona. The group decided to continue searching for Hiru, believing that speaking with him directly could clear up their confusion. Hawk stayed behind to keep an eye on the villagers to prevent any mischief from them. Meanwhile, Hakuryu and the others were ambushed because they knew Hiru's secret, and the villagers did not intend to let them leave. Noticing that Yona was getting closer, Hiru decided to eliminate these intruders. However, the dragon blood within him kept reminding him that the girl before him was the master he was meant to serve for life. It was Hiru's pet squirrel that broke the deadlock. Yona's approach made Hiru's nerves tense again. If Yona was truly an invader, failing to stop her could doom the entire village. Upon learning that Yona had come for the power of Hiru, he prepared to kill her, seeing anyone who wanted Hiru's power as an enemy. Yet Hiru found himself unable to thrust the blade. Yona continued to invite Hiru to join her as a companion, but Hiru said he was already cursed, insisting that this power must not be known to outsiders, so he could not accept her request. Yona told Hiru that when he held her hand, it felt warm. Even if he carried a dreadful curse, she did not care. Hiru stood frozen, torn by his emotions. As Yona reached the cave entrance, the villagers had already surrounded it. To conceal Hiru's existence, they planned to kill Yona and her group, fearing that if the secret was exposed, it would attract endless invaders. Just as the fight began, the stone mountain suddenly shook due to an earthquake, causing numerous rocks to fall. Once the mountain stabilized, the entrance was already sealed. Hawk frantically dug from the outside while panic started to set in for those trapped within the narrow space, facing the threat of suffocation. Hakuryu also revealed his dragon claws, causing the villagers to look on in horror once again. They blamed everything on Hiru, living in constant fear of his power's outburst and dreading that their own children might become the next Hiru. After realizing they were trapped, Hiru also approached the blocked entrance. The villagers accidentally knocked off Hiru's mask. After seeing his eyes, everyone was not petrified. To calm the villagers, Hiru put his mask back on and started chopping at the rocks with an axe. Using his dragon eyes, he found the thinnest wall leading outside and began to break through it before they ran out of oxygen. Hearing the noise, Hawk also dug from the outside. Together, they finally made an opening. Outside, Yona invited Hiru to join her again, and in her presence, he did not need to keep his eyes shut. Hiru finally tried to trust others. Since the previous Hiru's death, he had isolated himself and never opened up to anyone. Before leaving, Hiru deeply bowed to the villagers, acknowledging the village that had raised generations of Hiru. After starting the journey with Yona, Hakuryu took on the role of Seiryu's older brother, teaching him various skills of a dragon warrior. Although Seiryu was too introverted to remove his mask and only comfortable calling Yona by name, it was a good start.